Hi everyone, I'm Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. This falls into the confection category. I'm gonna show you a soft chocolate caramel with almonds, and it's all made stovetop. This is really great for those of you who want something quick for accompanying your friends, but you don't feel like baking cookies and you didn't start your fruitcake 2 months ago. So it's really a cool recipe. I'm excited to show you. This is a recipe that I adapted from very, very famous French chef named Alain Ducasse from his very famous book, as Le Grand Livre de Cuisine, or has encyclopedia basically of French recipes. And in the dessert book, this is featured. I learned this recipe at my one restaurant gig, which was my externship after culinary school. These soft chocolate caramels were served as the mignardises at the end of the meal, meaning the mignardise is the term for a little kind of sweet kind of bonbon or candy or confection that's served after dessert, with the check. And they were notoriously tricky. It was the kind of thing where if the humidity was off, the batch was ruined. I definitely ruined these more than once at making them in the restaurant because I didn't know what I was doing. And frankly, no one was supervising me, so it was just go make these. I didn't know what I was doing, but now I know how to make them and they're incredibly good. This is not a caramel in the sense that we're used to thinking of a caramel, which is sugar cooked to golden brown. This is a caramel in texture only, but in flavor, it's all chocolate. So ingredients, I'm gonna start with granulated sugar, lots of butter, heavy cream, a little bit of corn syrup. In the original recipe, it calls for glucose, which is actually something different, but there's enough glucose in corn syrup that's the American substitution. Glucose is something you find in Europe. A little bit of baking soda, kosher salt, a little water. The two crucial ingredients for the flavor are about a cup of toasted sliced almonds. The toasting is really important because it's gonna add some kind of savory bitterness to the recipe that it really needs. And then I have chopped unsweetened chocolate. So 100% cacao, not dark chocolate, unsweetened. And then some vanilla. Special equipment, the main thing here is that you're really gonna want an instant read thermometer. Yes, you can use a candy thermometer, but for this recipe in particular, it's really helpful to have the instant read because you can get multiple readings around the pot as you're cooking. I'm gonna use 2 different saucepans, and then I have behind me, this is a 9x9 shallow baking dish lined with a little bit of parchment. You can use any shallow baking dish that you have around. 8x8, 9x9 is fine. You could do 2 loaf pans. Anything will work. It will just change the thickness of the caramels a little bit. So the first thing that we're going to do is get our heavy cream and our butter melted together. I'm using unsalted butter. This is all in grams because I converted it from the original recipe. This is the vanilla paste. You could use a half a vanilla bean. That's what the recipe calls for. So you would cut the bean in half, slit it lengthwise, scrape it, add the seeds and the pod. But I have paste already and it's just easier. So I'm gonna use a good glug of vanilla paste. And to this, I'm also gonna add kosher salt. So I increased the salt quite a bit compared to the original recipe. This is about a teaspoon of kosher. This is diamond. If you're using Morton, do half that amount. So we're gonna get all of this heating together in my first saucepan. And the idea here is that you are adding a warm cream mixture to the sugar solution that we're gonna cook. And that's because if you were to add cold cream and butter, it would definitely make the sugar seize up and it would just take longer to get it warmed up and melted again. So the other idea here is that if you're using a vanilla bean, you have time as it's coming up and kind of sitting and keeping at that warm temp, it has time to infuse the flavor. So let's get this on just over a low. We're gonna let all of this melt together. And then once this is smooth and melted, I'm gonna keep it warm on the burner behind me. So I'm gonna keep this on low. Then I'm gonna grab my second saucepan and I'm going to combine my sugar. Hold on, I gotta check the recipe because just the baking soda, where's the baking soda go? The vanilla, oh, so, oops. Can I say something real quick?
Yep.
My baking soda was supposed to go with the cream. I'm gonna add that. Why is there baking soda in this recipe? I don't actually know. It's obviously to make it more, less acidic, to turn it more basic. I can't say I know exactly why that's important here, but it's just what the original recipe calls for. So here I have in my second saucepan, I added my sugar. I'm gonna put in my corn syrup. The original recipe uses something called glucose, which is an invert or liquid sugar, much more common in Europe as like a pastry ingredient. Now I'm using straight American light corn syrup, which contains a good amount of glucose, but has other sugars. I think it has like maltose, other stuff in there, but it works well enough here. And then to that I have 4 tablespoons of water. Now, whenever I add water to a saucepan where I'm going to cook sugar, I do this step where I pour it around the edges. This to me just helps later on when cooking to prevent crystallization, because it's like I already know that I don't have any sugar crystals that are stuck around the sides. I am going to grab a pastry brush just to wipe down the sides as this cooks. So the first thing we want to do is get this over medium heat, and I'm going to stir to help dissolve the sugar. And the idea here is to dissolve all the sugar and make this clear solution. I'm starting to get some bubbles around the side, so this is coming up to a boil. This is where I'm going to stop stirring. All the sugar is dissolved and I have this solution. And now is where I'm going around the sides of the saucepan, and anywhere I see sugar crystals that are stuck on the side, I'm using the brush to dissolve those crystals. So now here's where I'm going to start swirling instead of stirring. The first part of the cooking process is to take this mixture to 283 Fahrenheit. So I'm going to turn this up. So obviously I have my thermometer, but I can also look at it and kind of know what the temperature is based on the bubbles. So right now you see like super rapid bubbles. That's because there's water in here that's boiling off. It's only once the water starts to really disappear and be driven off that the temperature will climb above the boiling point. So let me take the temperature, because I can see that I have those slower, thicker bubbles that look kind of glassy. Almost 270 now. And I'm also tilting the saucepan to give me a little more depth, because you don't want the thermometer to be touching the bottom of the pot. I think I'm probably there. Let's see. 283. Okay. So I'm there. I'm going to kill the heat. And now to this, I'm going to add my warm cream mixture. This is just under a simmer. So I'm going to slowly add this. There's a little bit of sputtering because the liquid and the cream and butter are boiling off. So all those vanilla seeds are going in. Let me scrape out this saucepan. This temperature has now come down to below boiling. And I want to stir this pretty well to make sure the fat and the sugar are well combined. And now I'm going to add a really crucial ingredient, which is 100% cacao or unsweetened chocolate. So this is chopped unsweetened chocolate. This is kind of the tricky part of the recipe, is that this chocolate really easily burns, and it's so temperature sensitive. So if I were to add this directly to the sugar, it would burn the chocolate, it wouldn't incorporate easily. And so now we're waiting until the temperature has cooled a little bit and we can incorporate the chocolate. So I want to stir this until everything is well combined. And I'm going to scrape down the sides pretty well as well. And the unsweetened chocolate is so important here because unsweetened chocolate is so bitter and there's a lot of sugar in here. And so it helps you to achieve this amazing texture that you can only achieve by like cooking this much sugar, but it balances out the flavor with all that bitterness. When this is all smooth and incorporated, we are going to cook it again. This is where you need to watch it carefully and prevent it from burning. So we have to get all the way up to 237. And this really means that you have to stir. You have to be very mindful of what's going on in the bottom of the saucepan, because it's so easy to scorch this and the mixture gets very thick. And you can see how thick the mixture is as it starts to bubble. This is coming up to a boil. I have it on medium. I am going to let this cook, but stirring, making sure I'm scraping the bottom really well until I reach 237 on my thermometer. That's the softball stage for our chewy caramels. This is where the instant read thermometer comes in really handy, because you want to test a lot of different spots. I definitely need to stir to make sure I'm staying. I'm going to also turn my heat down a little bit. By moderating your heat as you get close to that doneness point, that's how you avoid overcooking. So I'm at right at the 230 mark. So this is where you want to be very careful. You want to make sure you're stirring, the temperature is equalizing all around, and it's not getting too hot on the bottom. So I'm at 230, I should be right about there, 230. Oh, did I just go over it? All right, well, I'm just gonna call it done. Now I'm gonna take it off the heat and stir through the almonds. And then make sure you have your baking dish already prepared so that you can immediately pour it in. This starts to set pretty fast. For it to really fully set, it takes several hours, but immediately after taking it off the heat, you'll notice that it's gonna start to set up. So once you have everything incorporated, you're gonna pour it into your prepared pan. And even though you've been scraping the bottom the whole time to prevent burning, don't scrape the bottom now. You can do the sides. And as with any candy making, you really do want to use a very heavy bottomed saucepan, nothing that's like thin. That is really going to encourage scorching. So I have everything out, and I'm just going to quickly spread it into an even layer with my spatula. So this is done. We just have to let it cool and fully set, and then I'll unmold and slice it. And I have one I made last night, so we're gonna grab that one and we can cut it up. Here I have my batch of caramels that I made last night. So it has had a lot of time to set. So I've turned it over, and I'm gonna just turn it right side up now. And we're gonna slice it. So when you cut it, you see all the little pieces of almond. One thing that's unique about these caramels in particular is that while they're very soft, they also hold their shape. So these just have such a cool texture from, a lot of it is the kind of setting power of that unsweetened chocolate. So one recipe you can see makes quite a bit. I cut half into 30 pieces. If you go to like a cake decorating store, you can buy actually like foil candy wrappers. They come in different colors, so you can make them super festive, or you could just cut parchment into little squares and wrap each one individually. It's an amazing gift. So the caramel is smooth, it's emulsified, it's soft, it's holding its shape. I think next time I make them, I'm gonna increase the amount of almonds. I think I could use more. There is a kind of underlying butteriness, but of course what you get is like very impactful chocolate flavor. I feel really good revisiting recipes that I felt tricky to me at the time, because I've developed so many more skills since then and more experience that it's nice to revisit those things that felt hard and realize that like you actually have the skill to make them again. Thank you, Alain Ducasse. And I hope you try them, and happy holidays, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.